Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekly reading report. It's time for my weekly reading report, that fantastic program where I talk about all the stuff that I read during the previous week. And I did read some stuff, so let's talk about it. But wait, Roger, we have some news. We have a couple news items to get out of the way before the reading report. The first news item is pretty surprising. Roger and I won an award. We won an award. Believe it or not, I checked and it seems to be true. We won an award, one of the awards that was given out this year by the Robert E. Howard Foundation. And I won the Venarium Award, Emerging Scholar, which is clearly undeserved. But we won that for the Robert E. Howard Show, which we do sometimes here from Vaughan Manor, where we talk about all things Robert E. Howard, my favorite writer of all time. And the Robert E. Howard Foundation noticed us and nominated us for an award. And apparently we got the award. Roger and I will be fighting about who deserves the award more as soon as we stop filming. But frankly, neither one of us deserves it. But we'll take it. We'll take it, right, Roger? So thank you, Robert E. Howard Foundation, for thinking of Roger and me. That's a good title. Thank you for thinking of us. The next bit of news is not so good. The next bit of news is a sad bit of news because we're going to be mourning the passing of something pretty important. We're going to be mourning the death of Marvel Masterworks. Marvel Masterworks apparently are no more. Marvel has canceled their Marvel Masterworks line, a line of reprints which have been going on since 1987. I think it was 87. They've been printing these for a long, long time. These are very high quality reprints of old Marvel comics. This one is Werewolf by Night. And these are really, really high quality reprints. They're just awesome. And they've been printing Marvel Masterworks of Fantastic Four and Thor and Spider-Man and Captain America and everybody in the Marvel Universe practically since the 1980s. And a lot of collectors have been collecting these for decades. And this is the Werewolf by Night volume, but if you were collecting Werewolf by Night in Marvel Masterworks, tough luck, because it ain't going to be finished, apparently. So sad news that this line has been discontinued, or according to Marvel, I think they said it was put on hiatus until further notice. But from what I'm hearing, it's canceled, which sucks. It's understandable because this is a very high quality line of reprints that tend to be pretty expensive. Like this one has a cover price on the back of $75. $75 for 8 issues of Werewolf by Night, 2 issues of Marvel Spotlight, and an issue of Marvel Team Up. So the page count isn't high for the price point. But these have been published for decades, and there are collectors that have been collecting these all that time. But I guess at this point, you have got Marvel also doing the Omnibus line of reprints, and you've also got the Epic collections now, which is reprinting a lot of the same material in thicker softcover volumes for a lot less money. I guess they felt like it just wasn't worth the price, especially now, because things aren't getting any less expensive at the moment. So, yeah. The Marvel Masterworks are no more. They are done, and I'm sorry to see them go. There are a lot of very unhappy collectors because a lot of these collections are unfinished. You know, they were just getting into Walter Simonson's Thor run, for example, in these Marvel Masterworks, and now that won't be finished. Tomb of Dracula won't be finished. Werewolf won't be finished. What can I tell you? It sucks, but it's unfortunate news. So all the good news and the bad news is out of the way. What the hell did I read? let me break out my list for the 500 book challenge. The challenge where I have to read 500 books that I own before I'll buy any new ones. So where did we leave off last week? We left off with book number 256, which I was just about to read. Book 256 was Doc Savage, The Red Skull. A Doc Savage adventure from the 1930s. This was published, I have it written down here, August of 1933. This was the 6th Doc Savage story published. I'm reading Doc Savage once a month, and I'm reading Doc Savage in the order that Doc Savage was originally published in the pulp magazines. So this is the 6th one I've read this year, and I'm having a great time reading these Doc Savage books. I'm really enjoying them. This one isn't the best of the Doc Savage books that I've read recently, but it's pretty darn good. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, this stuff is great. Great pulp adventure. Doc Savage, this time in the desert, as it says on the back here, into a subterranean world of red-hot lava, Doc Savage and his Fantastic Five descend to face the most fiendish foe of his career. I don't know if that's actually true. Awaiting Doc is an irresistible power that can level mountains, that can enslave the world, and that threatens to make Doc's most dangerous adventure his very last. You want to read it now, don't you? Well, you should, because it's awful good. So great pulp adventure stuff. Doc Savage, The Red Skull. Really enjoyed this one. So that's how I started off the week with that one. But then I continued with book number 257, which I read for June on the Range. We are in June, which is the time for the reading event, June on the Range, where myself and my posse of co-hosts are celebrating Westerns. And all month long, we're reading Westerns. And this week, I read this. This is Guns Blaze at Sundown. Guns Blaze at Sundown. Which apparently, according to the Chicago Tribune, was one of the most exciting Westerns of the season. This was written by Al Cody. I've read a few Al Cody books. Usually they're pretty exciting, and this was a pretty exciting Western. It's full of like every Western trope you could possibly think of. This is a Trouble on the Ranch story, where we have a cowboy, whose uncle has passed away, and he's inherited the ranch that his uncle owned. And so he's traveling to the ranch when he gets bushwhacked and left for dead. And he's found by a friendly young physician who takes him home and nurses him back into health. But when our hero goes to find the ranch that he inherited, it turns out there's another guy there using his name. And so it's a case of stolen identity in the Old West. Now, apparently, it was a lot easier to steal people's identities in the Old West, because this guy just lifted our hero's papers off of him, which proved that he owned the ranch, and just said, "Hey, I'm the owner of this ranch." And so our hero has to take the ranch back from him, and there's just one thing after another. It's full of danger and adventure and action. It was excellent. Really enjoyed Guns Blaze at Sundown by Al Cody. This is an old book. When was this published? 1952 is when this reprint edition was published. Stories from 1950. So I don't know how easy it is to get a hold of Guns Blaze at Sundown now. Possibly there's, a copy online or an ebook of this somewhere. Possibly. There were 1 million Westerns published in the 1950s. Like literally probably 1 million. And this is just one of those probably forgotten Westerns from back then. But it was excellent. I really, really enjoyed it. This cover has nothing at all to do with the book, but it's a cool cover. So there you go. Guns Blaze at Sundown by Al Cody, which I read for June on the range. So that was book 257. Before I get to book 258, I should mention what I'm reading right now. Right now, I'm reading The Shadow, Mobsman on the Spot by Walter Gibson, under the pen name of Maxwell Grant. So, The Shadow, Mobsman on the Spot. This is one of the pyramid paperbacks, which reprinted the pulp adventures of The Shadow. I read the first two of these pyramid books, what was it, last year? And so now I'm going to get back to them. And this was the only one of the pyramid series, I think, that was not illustrated by Steranko on the cover. This is an old pulp magazine cover that they used for this paperback book, The Mobsman on the Spot. I barely got into this, so I will tell you more about The Shadow next week. But now for book number 258. I finally finished The Fantastic Four Omnibus by John Byrne, Volume 2. So I am reading every issue of The Fantastic Four from the first run of The Fantastic Four, which ran from 1961, if I'm remembering right, up to 1996. And John Byrne had a very well-respected run on the Fantastic Four in the 1980s. And it's been great. It's probably been the best run on the Fantastic Four. It definitely has been the best Fantastic Four run on the Fantastic Four since Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were on the book. And so I had a great time with it. I read some of these issues when I was a teenager, but I never read all of them until now. I've been pretty impressed by John Byrne's work on this series. I tended to like the first half of his run better than the second half, but there's a lot of good stuff in the second half. In fact, the stories that this ended up with were just some great stories, which involved time travel and Annihilus and Blastar, the living bomb burst, and all with fantastic artwork by John Byrne. Of course, he gives us our characters with some terrible haircuts, but that's okay. It's pretty good stuff. It's really good stuff, actually. But John Byrne left, and he left in issue 293 was his last issue, and then he went over to DC to do Superman. And so the last couple issues, which close out a storyline he started, are done by Roger Stern and illustrated by Jerry Ordway. And I like Ordway just as much as I like Byrne, if not more so. Right? But then Ordway left and went to do Superman as well. So this has some cool stuff in it. One of the really cool things that you'll find in this book is the Last Galactus story. The Last Galactus story, which was a story that was serialized in Epic Illustrated, which was a great magazine Marvel did back in the 1980s. And he did this spectacular story. I mean, the story wasn't much, but the artwork was just great. About Galactus in the far, far future. And unfortunately, and I didn't realize this until I started reading this story was never finished. Epic Illustrated was canceled before John Byrne finished this story. And he just never got back to finish it for like any reprints or anything else. So it's an unfinished story. We never will know probably how the Last Galactus story will end up. Which was unfortunate because it was pretty good, and it doesn't exactly leave off on a cliffhanger, but it does leave you wanting more. You want that final chapter, and you don't get it, unfortunately. And I've never heard John Byrne really mention it, so I don't know if he's ever going to get back to it. I have heard John Byrne say in interviews that his work on the Fantastic Four is the work he's most proud of as far as his entire career goes. And he ought to be proud because he did a great job on the Fantastic Four. I was pretty impressed. In a future Epic Comic Book Wednesday, I'll talk about it in more detail. But then I moved on to post John Byrne Fantastic Four. All the rest of the Fantastic Four I have in Epic collections, all the way up until the end of the first run of the Fantastic Four when it was canceled for Heroes Reborn and brought right back for Heroes Reborn in Volume 2. But all the rest of the original run up to 1996, I have in Epic collections, and that's how I'm going to finish it out. There's a lot more Fantastic Four to go. Just this morning, I read issue number 296, which was the anniversary issue, because this was Marvel's 25th anniversary at this time, and the Fantastic Four were the first Marvel superhero comic books for the Marvel age of comics in the 1960s. So yeah, this was actually a really good issue. It brought the Thing back, which I was happy to see. This wasn't a great issue, but it was pretty darn good. And it was wonderful just because I've been really missing the Thing. And so we get a lot of action. Different artists illustrated this. Here we again have Ordway. Love him. Great artist. So yeah, I'm on to the post John Byrne stuff, and it looks like John Buscema is coming back, I think, in the following issue that I am going to be reading tomorrow. Let me just double check that, because I like to be wrong about these things. Let's see. Yeah, John and Sal Buscema both are working on the next issue I'll be reading, which is issue 297. Now, from what I remember, I'm moving into an era of the Fantastic Four, which was not my favorite. But, you know, I was reading these when I was 16 or 17 years old, so that was a long time ago. We'll see what I think of them now. We'll see. So, that's the Fantastic Four. I also read some other stuff. Along with my Marvel Master Plan to read all the superheroes, I've also got my Marvel Monster Plan. I am also reading Tomb of Dracula. And I didn't read as much of Tomb of Dracula this week just because I was reading so much Fantastic Four. But I did read some good stuff. In particular, one of the really good things I read from Tomb of Dracula was issue number 10. And issue number 10 is where Blade, the Vampire Slayer, first makes his appearance. So yes, the very famous Blade, who has appeared in some excellent movies. Well, he appeared in an excellent movie, a good movie, and a movie that was not so good. But I like Blade, and he first made his appearance here in the Tomb of Dracula, issue number 10, and I'm reading it in stunning black and white. They call me Blade. So he's really, really 1970s at this point, a very 1970s Blade. And it was a great issue. Blade he comes across as a real challenge to Dracula. He has a great fight with Dracula, illustrated by Gene Colan. It was awesome. So that's about where I'm at on Tomb of Dracula. So I will probably read more Tomb of Dracula this week, but I'm also going to be reading alongside Tomb of Dracula every issue of my favorite monster comic, my favorite monster anthology comic that came out in the 1970s, which was Creatures on the Loose. So there's no collected edition of Creatures on the Loose, but I do have the individual issues. But before Creatures on the Loose was Creatures on the Loose, it started off its life as Tower of Shadows. And this is the first issue of Tower of Shadows. Tower of Shadows lasted 9 fantastic issues. In the 9th issue, there was a really great adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's story of Pickman's Model, which I remember being really good. So I'm going to be reading the first 9 issues of Tower of Shadows, and then I'm going to be reading Creatures on the Loose, starting with issue number 10, because it took over from Tower of Shadows. This first issue of Tower of Shadows was actually from the 1960s. I think it was 69 when this came out. Yeah, it came out in 1969. And so every week I'll be talking about an issue of Tower of Shadows. This has been reprinted, or at least some of the material from the first 9 issues has been reprinted. Not all of it. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe someone could tell me. But I have the original issues, so that's what we're going to be talking about. I read issue number 1, which actually was pretty great. It's got a story written and drawn by Steranko at the stroke of midnight, which is really, really awesome. Just some fantastic artwork in this first story. And it's not exactly a haunted house story. It's not exactly a time travel story, but maybe it's a little of both of those things. And the artwork by Steranko is fantastic. I really like it. Not everybody loves Steranko, I know. But I like him an awful lot. And I think he just does a fantastic job with this initial story. It's just really, really cool. The way he lays it all out. Gives it a very claustrophobic feel with these tiny little panels. It's excellent. It's excellent stuff. So that was the first story, which was by Steranko. The second story in here is by Johnny Craig. Johnny Craig, who we know from EC Comics. But something weird about the artwork here. So this is a story written by Stan Lee, illustrated by Johnny Craig. But you'll notice this woman in the background does not look like a woman that Johnny Craig would draw. In fact, it looks like somebody that John Romita would draw. In fact, all the faces in this comic book look like John Romita went over Johnny Craig's faces and redid them in his own style. And I don't know why that could be, because Johnny Craig could draw faces. I know, I read all those EC comics that he drew. So that I find unfortunate. That for this story, all of these faces, definitely the woman's face was redrawn by Romita. You could just tell, which kind of sucks. The story is decent. It's not great, but I love Johnny Craig, and so I would have loved to see the original version to see how this actually looked. The next story, A Time to Die, was illustrated by John Buscema. So we have another Stan Lee story with illustrations by John Buscema, and it's a pretty good story, and the artwork is fantastic. It's excellent stuff. So another really, really cool story, this time by Buscema. So you can see we've got some good artists in this first issue. And that could have been the end. Yeah, that was the last story. So it was 3 stories in here. But if you read the original issues, you get all the extra stuff. And we have an advertisement for a companion magazine, Chamber of Darkness. And I'll be starting to read Chamber of Darkness probably after I finish Creatures on the Loose. I'm pretty sure I have every issue of Chamber of Darkness as well, I think. I loved these old horror comic books, so I made a point of getting them back in the day. I don't remember when I bought this, but it was a long, long, long time ago. And it took a while to find out in the vault. But I think that's everything for the week. I think it is. Okay, guys, we'll catch you next time.